You need to turn off that generator immediately. The noise is disturbing the neighborhood.
That's not possible. If I shut it down, my home's drainage system will stop working.
Emergency equipment would turn me into the most talked about person in Oak Ridge Estates. But when the worst ice storm in nearly 30 years hit Springfield, Missouri, my backup generator became more controversial than
All right, let's get this generator set. Priming the pump now.
My name is Brian
and pull.
Forster. I'm a telecommunications engineer, and about 60% of my job is remote. Video conferences, server monitoring, emergency troubleshooting, all things that don't stop just because the weather turns ugly. 3 years earlier, I had moved into Oak Ridge Estates after a divorce that left me craving peace, predictability, and a clean slate. The subdivision marketed itself as exclusive, orderly, and well-maintained. At the time, that sounded comforting. The houses were large but tasteful, lawns trimmed to perfection. No loud parties, no junk cars, everything regulated by a strict homeowners association that promised to protect property values. What they didn't advertise was how much power certain people enjoyed enforcing those rules. My house was a 2-story colonial with a finished basement. One of the reasons I chose it was its slightly higher elevation and proximity to the drainage creek that ran through the development. Back then, I saw that as a positive. Less chance of flooding, better drainage. 2 summers after moving in, a severe thunderstorm knocked out power for 4 straight days. I lost hundreds of dollars in food, couldn't work, and spent the time sweating in the dark like it was the 1800s. That experience changed my perspective. I bought a 22-kilowatt natural gas standby generator shortly after. It cost me nearly $12,000. Concrete pad, transfer switch, permits, inspections, professional installation. But it was legal, code compliant, and approved by the HOA after some predictable back and forth. They asked for screening shrubs. I planted them immediately. To me, it wasn't a luxury. It was infrastructure. Fast forward to late January. Meteorologists started using words like historic, dangerous, and life-threatening. An Arctic air mass was colliding with moisture from a Gulf. Freezing rain, sleet, ice accumulation measured in inches, not millimeters. Anyone who'd lived through Midwestern winters knew what that meant. Power lines snapping, trees collapsing, days, maybe weeks without electricity. By Wednesday afternoon, I started preparing. Water in bathtubs, charge batteries, groceries that didn't need cooking, gas tank full. By evening, freezing drizzle coated the streets. Overnight, the neighborhood turned into a glass sculpture. Thursday morning was eerily quiet. No traffic, no vehicles, just the occasional crack of ice-laden branches breaking under their own weight. I was mid-call with a client in Seattle when the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. 5 seconds later, my generator roared to life. The transition was smooth. Heat stayed on. Internet rebooted quickly. My work continued as if nothing had happened. Outside, though, Oak Ridge Estates was unraveling. Neighbors stood in driveways, staring at dark houses. Some packed cars to leave town. Others just looked lost. I checked on a few people. Offer help. Coffee. Warmth. Everything was civil. Calm. Until Patricia Cunningham showed up. She was the HOA president. Mid-50s, always impeccably dressed, always speaking as if she were addressing subordinates instead of neighbors. Her white Escalade sat idling in my driveway while she stood on my porch, clearly irritated. "Brian, we need to discuss your generator." She claimed it was excessively loud, in a frozen subdivision with no power. When I explained calmly that it was approved, permitted, and essential, her tone hardened. "I'm ordering you to turn it off." Not asking, ordering. When I refused, she threatened fines, legal action, consequences. That's when I realized this wasn't about noise. It was about control. In that moment, standing in my doorway, icy wind blowing in, heat pouring out, was the spark that turned a storm emergency into a neighborhood war. That night, I barely slept. Not because my house was cold, it was perfectly warm. Not because the generator was loud. Inside, it was barely a hum. I couldn't sleep because something about Patricia's visit felt unfinished. She hadn't gotten what she wanted, and people like her didn't just walk away. Friday morning arrived with brutal clarity. The sky was clear, but the cold was savage. The temperature had dropped into the single digits, and the ice coating everything had hardened into something closer to concrete than frost. My generator had run all night without missing a beat. I pulled on my coat and boots to check the property, moving carefully across the slick walkway. That's when I saw it. Footprints. Fresh ones. They circled the generator pad. At first, I told myself it could have been an animal, but the shape was wrong. Too deliberate. Too human. I crouched down and noticed something else. The access panel on the generator was slightly open. My stomach tightened. I opened it fully and examined the controls. Nothing was broken, but the emergency shut-off switch had been partially turned. Not enough to disable the unit, but enough to prove someone had tried. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. Someone had entered my property and attempted to shut down my emergency power during a dangerous weather event. I went straight inside and pulled up my security camera footage. The timestamp told the whole story. 6:45 a.m. It was still dark. Ice glistened under the porch lights. Patricia Cunningham appeared on my screen. She moved cautiously, almost sneaking. She glanced around, clearly checking to see if anyone was watching. Then she walked straight to the generator. She opened the panel. She fiddled with the switches. She leaned in close, squinting, clearly unsure what she was doing. For nearly 5 minutes, she tried to turn it off. When she failed, she slammed the panel shut and walked away. I replayed the footage twice, then a third time. The disbelief gave way to anger. This wasn't HOA enforcement. This was trespassing. This was tampering. This was reckless endangerment. I saved the footage in multiple locations and called the non-emergency police line. Given the ice storm, I didn't expect immediate action, but I wanted it documented. Then I called my insurance company. Then my lawyer, Marcus Webb, and I had gone to college together. He practiced law in Springfield and, like me, was working from home because of the storm. When I sent him the footage, he didn't hesitate. "This is serious," he said. "HOA president or not, she had no right to be there. That's trespassing at minimum. Potential sabotage during an emergency at worst. What do you recommend?" I asked. "First, a cease and desist. Immediately. Make it clear she is not to enter your property again or interfere with your equipment. That alone might scare her into stopping." Within an hour, the letter was sent, firm, professional, and unmistakable. Copies went to every HOA board member. Patricia responded explosively. Instead of replying privately, she sent an all-neighbors email blast. She accused me of being selfish, claimed my generator was a safety hazard, insisted she had authority to inspect dangerous equipment. Then she announced fines. $500 per day. Retroactive. Payable immediately. The email was dripping with arrogance. But something unexpected happened. People pushed back. Replies started flooding in, not supporting her, but questioning her authority. Neighbors asked where the bylaw was. Others pointed out the weather emergency. Some flat out accused her of abusing power. Patricia doubled down. She sent another email threatening more inspections, more fines, and consequences for anyone who encouraged defiance. That's when Tom Parker spoke up. Tom was a retired fire chief, calm, respected, and not someone who spoke unless it mattered. His email changed everything. He pointed out a reality Patricia had completely ignored. Many homes in Oak Ridge estates, including hers, relied on electric sump pumps to prevent basement flooding. With frozen ground and continued runoff, groundwater was still moving beneath the surface. Without power, those pumps were useless. He reminded everyone that the subdivision's drainage design assumed individual homeowners would manage basement water themselves. No power meant no protection. Then he dropped another detail. Several homes on Patricia Street had known water issues. Poor grading, high water table, previous minor flooding. I went down to my basement and listened. My sump pump kicked on. Again and again. Every 15 to 20 minutes. That's when it hit me. My generator wasn't just keeping my lights on. It was keeping water out of my basement and helping regulate flow into the shared drainage system. Patricia wanted that generator off. And if it went off, so will my sump pump. I didn't act right away. I wrestled with the idea. I'm not cruel by nature. Causing damage, even indirectly, didn't sit right with me. But Patricia didn't stop. Friday afternoon, she showed up again, this time with a stranger and a decibel meter. She claimed he was a noise consultant. They walked my property without permission, measuring sound levels, ignoring my objections, acting as if my yard belonged to them. That was the moment something inside me snapped. If she wanted compliance, I would give her exactly what she asked for. Friday afternoon, Kobad, main koi announcement nahi ki. Koi email nahi. Koi warning nahi. Mine is sirf Patricia ki di main follow ki. Generator banned. The house went quiet. Lights off. Heat fading. And most importantly, my sump pump went silent. At first, nothing dramatic happened. That's the thing about consequences. They don't always arrive immediately. Sometimes they wait, quietly building pressure underground. Literally. Outside, the temperature hovered just above freezing for the first time since the storm began. Ice that had locked the ground solid started to soften. Beneath the surface, groundwater began moving again, seeping through soil that couldn't absorb it fast enough. In my basement, I could hear it before I saw it. A faint trickle, then a soft gurgle. Water pushing its way through hairline cracks along the foundation wall. By midnight, a thin sheen of water covered part of the basement floor. I documented everything. Photos, video, timestamps. If I was going to suffer damage, I was going to do it by the book. Around 2 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Text messages first, then calls. Brian, are you up? Do you have power? Something's wrong. By dawn, Oak Ridge Estates was in full-blown panic. Basements were flooding. One house, then another, then entire blocks. Sump pumps sat useless, silent plastic boxes mocking homeowners who had never imagined they'd need backup power. Patricia Street was hit hardest. Her house, according to Tom Parker, had always been vulnerable. Poor grading, high water table, a finished basement full of expensive furniture and electronics. Without power, the water had nowhere to go. By 7 a.m., water was pouring across her basement floor, ruining carpet, soaking drywall, destroying memories. Emergency services were overwhelmed. The utility company was still days away from restoring power. Insurance hotlines were jammed. And suddenly, my generator wasn't too loud anymore. Around 9 a.m., there was pounding at my door. I already knew who it was. Patricia Cunningham stood on my porch, hair unstyled, makeup smeared, panic leaking through the cracks in her authority. Her expensive coat was thrown on hastily, boots wet and muddy. Brian, she said, voice shaking, we need to talk. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. About the generator? I asked calmly. Yes, she snapped, then caught herself. I mean, about the situation. I let the silence stretch. Our basement is flooding, she finally admitted. Several homes are. We need power. If you could just turn your generator back on. I thought it was against HOA rules, I said quietly. Her eyes flashed. This is an emergency. So is the ice storm, I replied. She tried a different approach. Think of the community. People are suffering. I nodded. I tried to. You find me. Trespassed. Try to sabotage my equipment. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Because she knew. I'll turn it back on, I said finally, but not under threat, and not without conditions. What conditions? She asked quickly. First, all fines withdrawn in writing. Second, a written apology to the HOA. Third, you resign as president. Her face went pale. You can't demand that. I can, I said calmly. Or you can explain to your insurance company why you personally caused preventable damage. She stared at me for a long time. Then she nodded. Within an hour, an email went out. Finas Vicindif. Apology issued. Emergency meeting scheduled. I turned the generator back on. The sump pump roared to life, pushing water out with angry determination. It helped, but the damage was already done. Over the next week, reality set in. Insurance investigators reviewed emails. Police reviewed footage. Lawyers reviewed bylaws. Patricia was cited for trespassing. The HOA's legal counsel declared her fines invalid. At the emergency meeting, she tried to defend herself, but the room was done listening. She resigned that night. 3 months later, Oak Ridge Estates quietly updated its bylaws. Emergency preparedness was no longer considered nuisance. Generators were protected during outages. HOA authority was clearly limited. As for me, I kept my generator. I kept my house. And I learned something valuable. Power doesn't come from titles. It comes from preparation. And people who abuse authority always forget one thing. Eventually, the lights come back on, and everyone can see what they did in the dark.